there's a lot of our own beliefs that are in the content. So again, with the authenticity, that's how we believe. And then we go out and do it too, to the point where, buying a property that is a vacation house before we actually buy a primary residence. People were like, you got to buy a primary residence first and then you buy the vacation house. I said, why? Why do I need to do that? I don't, because I don't need that. I need what I want. And being able to do that, and then bringing that back into the conversation to say, not that what we're doing is the best way to do it. It's certainly the best way for us to do it. But again, that think differently about what you think you need to be doing and find out what you want to be doing. And even if it sounds crazy and your parents or friends are saying, what are you doing? You can go ahead and do that thing.
Welcome to episode 43 of the Innovating Advice Show. I'm joined by Eric Roberge, CEO of Beyond Your Hammock in Boston, Massachusetts, for what is essentially an awesome masterclass for anyone considering or in the process of starting their own business or moving in a new direction. Eric followed his gut and started Beyond Your Hammock in 2013 as a monthly subscription model to work with people in their 20s and 30s before there was a blueprint for how to do so. In this episode, he's sharing everything about his journey, from setting aside his ego and waiting tables in the early days, to how he hustled to grow the business, how he's focused his niche over the years, his fee model, which is in the show notes, and his client journey. Links and show notes at innovatingadvice.com/episode 43. You're listening to the Innovating Advice Show, and I'm your host, Kate Holmes, bringing you the global pulse on financial services innovation, featuring financial planners, financial advisors, and related professionals from all corners of the globe. Let's dive in. Hey, Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kate, thanks for having me in.
Oh, it's so awesome to chat with you again. I know it's been a few years, but we were both trying to think when we first met, and pretty sure it was back in 2014. And thinking back then, you and I were one of that small group of people that had never met, that all happened to start very similar businesses in 2013. And it's like something was in the air all across the US. And I always get asked, what was my catalyst for starting Belmore Financial in 2013? So I love your story. We all kind of got to the same place, but from very different paths. So what was your catalyst to starting Beyond Your Hammock in 2013?
I had had enough of the typical advisory business.
Yeah.
Meaning, I don't know how many times I've been told I can't work with younger people, and those are the people that I connected with most. And if I'm going to do something that I love, I want to be doing it with people that I love to work with. So it was really just that. It was, I'm done with the, let's do the business how it's been done, and wanted to very much do it how I wanted it done.
Yeah, and that's such a big thing. And that's what we hear from people all over is, I want to work with people that are like me, whether it's similar interests, similar age groups, race, gender, you name it. And there are so many categories of people all over the world that are underserved or not at all served. And, when you and I started, there was no blueprint for what does that look like. And I was told the same thing, like, you can't work with younger people, or you can't work on a, monthly basis. And I love that we're all just like, well, yes, you can. And I'm going to figure it out. And Eric, what I love about your story is that, it's not easy. And you were hustling and you were like, I believe in this. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work. And we're going to talk about your journey and how great of a business you've built over these last 7 years. And one of the things, I really appreciate about you is in those early days, you did what had to be done. And part of that was actually waiting tables while you were building the business.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times when you're starting a business, and this goes for any industry, I would imagine, where you just have to drop your ego. And you just have to say, what needs to get done right now to get me to where I want to go? And that was it for me, because I had tried before to just start from scratch and build revenue doing financial planning with another company that I was a part of. And it didn't work that well because I wasn't making any money. And the stress of not making any money did not help me start making money, right? Like
Right.
you could see through the stress I was having talking to people about money. They're like, you okay right now? Do you have
Oh.
money? No, they weren't really saying
Yeah.
that, but I felt that inside. I'm like,
Right.
I'm a fraud. I'm not making any money. I'm telling you how to help, make money. So getting a secure job, I say secure, the waiter job was not secure in Salem, Massachusetts, because there's, the time of year when everybody comes into Salem and then they leave. After October 31st, Halloween, it's a ghost town for a while.
Uh,
But for a while, for a couple months anyway, I had a secure income that allowed me just to make ends meet, pay my rent, maybe a little bit of food. And that allowed me to get a little bit more confidence, to be a little bit more laid back in my conversations about saying, hey, this is what I do. This is how I can help. Would you like some help? Versus hounding them to say, you need to work with me.
yeah.
And that came through, and I think allowed me to start the spark of the business, which is Beyond Your Hammock now.
So that's super interesting. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about, I had Angel Rich on a recent episode, and we were talking about kind of just jumping in and going for it. And she said towards the end of that episode, jump out the window and build a parachute on the way down. And it sounds like that's kind of the way the route that you went as well.
It is, well, the first time when I had left corporate world to become a financial advisor, I certainly did that, because I didn't even do any cash flow planning. I didn't think about how I was going to make money. I just attached to a company and said, well, I'm a financial planner now. This is great. And that was 2007. So we all know what happened after that.
Yeah.
But the second time, at least I had a little bit more planning, in that before I left, I got the job as a waiter. And then with that job as a waiter in place, I started my business. And even though my old boss told me that I was ridiculously crazy for trying to start a new business and be a waiter at the same time, which he said is impossible, I just did that anyway because I knew that it would work.
And do you think, I'm just wondering, the fact that you did that job as a waiter, do you think that kind of helped with your mental clarity? I mean, even though it was something totally unrelated, knowing that you had that income, that allowed you during the hours that you were focused on building the business, like you said, it reduced some of that stress, and knowing that you had some of that money and you didn't have to, pressure clients to sign on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what comes to mind when you say that is a rolling stone gathers no moss. So as long as I had that momentum, that I was just going, I never had time to think about I don't know, anything negative that might come up.
Yeah.
Because I look back and I say, what the hell was I doing? How did I do that? Like, why? I wouldn't know how to do that if I started again.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I think it was just the constant, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday as a waiter, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as an advisor, and then obviously at nights just trying to plan things out with, big sheets of paper on the rug, trying to like design what I was doing, my process, how I would help people. Because again, like you said, there was no blueprint for helping younger people, and therefore no financial planning process that we could apply to that. So we just had to create, and eventually something stuck.
Yeah. And you were hustling during that time. And we had sort of our little mastermind group, and you and I had a lot of one-on-one calls, helping each other and kind of, what are you doing and what's working, what's not working. And you were getting out there, I feel like, networking like there's no tomorrow.
I mean, I had never networked my first 6 years as after graduation, because I didn't need to. I was in the corporate world, and at that point, I don't think networking was as big as it is now. And I didn't need to do it for my job because I had a secure job. And when I became an advisor in 2007, and I was working for other people, I was networking, but I was networking with people that I work with now. I wasn't networking with people that I needed to get as clients then. So I had this huge network of people that were untapped. And therefore, when I started my business, I could then go out there now being more confident, saying, this is my business. I don't have to sell you on somebody else's service. I'm going to sell you on me, which is much easier to do because this is what I do. This is who I am. And going back to that network that I had built over the last 5 years was really important, because I wasn't going back to sell them to work with me. I was going back to say, hey, this is what I'm doing now. This is why I feel like it's so great. And letting them say, oh, tell me more, or, oh, I know somebody you should talk to, versus driving home like, work with me, work with me, work with me, because that just wasn't my style. And it's not something that I wanted to do. I didn't want to pressure people into doing anything.
Yeah, but that gets back to the fact that it is kind of a slow build. I mean, like you said, stuff you did years ago is paying off now, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I know a lot of people that might be more on the sales side of things, of just, selling products, selling insurance, that's more of that immediate, hey, I'm going to sell it now, the reward is now. But the long term isn't often as rewarding. I'm going to say rarely, if ever, is as rewarding, except financially. But we're going to talk a bit about what's more important, being happy or having lots of money.
I know the answer to that. The idea of instant gratification is something that everybody seems to want these days, because with technology, you can have anything you want at your fingertips in a matter of seconds. So why not everything else in life? And I think that's where people get caught up, whether they're planners, business owners, or just clients, getting caught up in the I need it now. And really, they believe that they actually do need it now when they may not. And I was never somebody that needed something so bad now that I couldn't wait for it. That's not to say I'm not impatient, because I'm very impatient. But I know what I need to do to get to where I need to go, and I'm not going to rush that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And, in addition to networking, because one of the things people ask, or they're always like, oh, should I be writing, or should I just try to get quoted in the media, or should I be out there speaking, or, posting on social media, or networking? You did all of them. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, and most of them you still do. And that's not actually a skill or ability that everyone has. But were some of them more beneficial in the early days versus now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I probably do less of now is of course, in the pandemic, there's no face-to-face networking. But even before that, face-to-face networking is not something that I'm doing much of these days, because I put that on the back burner, because that burns a lot of time and effort that I can do things more efficiently now, and I stick to those things. So in the past, I definitely took the machine gun approach to say, let me do everything, say yes to everything, and then I'll determine what was effective and what wasn't as I continue to move, right? Going back to that Rolling Stone thing. And so getting quoted in the media through sources like the FPA and NAPFA and XY Planning Network, places that brought the media to me instead of having to go track media down, which was really important. Doing that, and in that process, getting up and running and writing on various platforms that, again, had traffic already, right? They already had a following, so I didn't have to build up that following on my own website initially. Was really important. So Kiplinger, Forbes, and Business Insider are three platforms that really help get us out there on an ongoing basis. And that's something that I've stuck with all the way through. Talking to other advisors was something that I did a long time ago. Advisors that don't do what I do for the people that I do it for, and therefore could support a young advisor doing things differently. NAPFA was really great for that, which is North American Personal Financial Advisors?
The National Association of Personal Financial Advisors.
Never remember the NA.
Yeah.
So, doing everything is right. But now going back to what works now and what's continued to work is that content. It's a slow build, just like we talked about, but getting the content out there on other sites, on my own site, through my blog, and now the podcast, is just something that, as long as I stay consistently doing those things, it's going to bring in clients, period.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it's still good to remember that, I think, for the people that aren't, if you're not comfortable speaking, you don't have to speak. If you prefer writing, then, all over the world, there are opportunities to write. Me, I actually don't enjoy writing at all. So guess what? I start a podcast. I can talk all day long. I can, talk way more than I can write. So just finding the things that do work for you. And as you said, number one thing, regardless of which path you go down or how many paths, is that consistency. And that's not always easy.
Yeah. Well, that you talked about choosing the thing that you feel good about or that you can do well. That's really important. I do think a lot of people are approaching this industry to say, what should I be doing? What is the right thing to do? And there's no right thing. There's just the thing that works for you. And you really have to find out what that is. Because as I used to say to advisors who didn't believe that a virtual type of a relationship could work with a client, I said, it's not about the virtual nature of the conversation. It's about how you are being on camera. And if you're being awkward on camera because you don't believe it's going to be a good way to build relationships, then you're not going to build relationships. So if you're someone who doesn't like to speak or doesn't like to be on video or doesn't like to write, find something that isn't that and then stick with that and be consistent with it.
Yep. Yeah, hugely. So Eric, I know in the beginning, your focus was kind of on, hey, I'm going to work with younger clients, but how much did you niche in the early days and how has that evolved over time?
Well, it was people in their 20s and 30s was my focus when I started the business. As long as you had a job and you needed some help, whether it was budgeting, investments, or something different, I wanted to work with you. And although that was fine getting started, I started to realize where my true value was as an advisor and where my pricing needed to be too to make it all work. Yeah. So the combination of building more specifically toward people in their 30s and 40s that were hitting their stride in their career, that were making the kind of money that really required the type of planning that I can deliver. You know, typically people that are making 300,000 or more as a household, USD. And that allowed me to start to hone in on my process for those types of people. So now we're talking about an age, a demographic, not necessarily about age, but certainly about life stage. And I like to say to people, it's not about how old you are, it's about how much time you have between now and when you might retire, whatever that means. Because most of the people that I'm working with have a big gap of time between now and age 65.
Yep.
So what do we do to make sure that we balance today and engage in right now, but still plan responsibly for tomorrow so we have choice throughout our entire life, not just later on?
Yeah. And that's another key point is, you know, people starting their businesses being like, hey, I need to figure out exactly what I'm going to focus on now. And I did exactly the same thing. I was like, people in their 20s and 30s. And, you know, I've said it many times, the average age of my clients, my first year was 57, you know, which just became fascinating to me because I was like, okay, you know, the fact that we were starting new business models and there weren't other people that they could have worked with in a similar way. I was like, oh, actually, you know, high income or high net worth people appreciated working virtually. And so I was just kind of testing the waters to be like, no, I'm just here to prove the model at this stage and show that it can be used with a much broader range of clients. But again, that just goes to show in the early days, yeah, start something, you know, and you might start a little ugly, but you can always change and adjust as time goes on.
Yeah. It goes back to that too. Do what you feel comfortable with people that you can relate to. Because a lot of people come into the business and say, I want to work with doctors. I want to work with lawyers. Well, why? What is the reason? Do you say that because you think they make money and therefore you can make money? That's a bad way to go. Yeah, if you actually know something about doctors or have a passion for doctors and what they do, or something that connects you in a way that allows you to relate with them and feel good about helping them, then that's one thing. But do start with a big net and then hone that in as you learn what you like to do and who you like to do it with.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So Eric, if I had to describe you in one word based on, you know, all the years I've known you and what I see out there and the conversations that we've had, it would be authentic. And that's such an important part of who you are and the message that you build and how clients find you. So what does being authentic mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean, and because people tend to think that authentic means just basically blab everything. It's don't overshare. Right? Like people don't need to know certain things that just don't have any relevance to you being honest and truthful and authentic. But what really authentic means to me is being comfortable with who I am and having that come through in who I'm being when I'm speaking to people. And asking questions that I would be asking somebody that I was comfortable with, even if we're not at that point yet. So, for example, I think one of the real reasons that I am able to close business for new clients is because I'm asking them questions that they want to answer, but people are afraid to ask them because they don't know them yet. But just It's the question that they're like, huh, I've never had to answer that question before. You got them right there. You're asking questions that they had never had to answer before, going to make them think differently. And therefore, there's some real good things that come out of that.
Yeah. And that's even being authentic has been something that's been beneficial to you, I think, in your writing and your podcast and being in the media is your ability to share. It's not even sharing opinions because that doesn't sound quite right. But I think, like you were saying, changing the conversation and opening people's minds and not doing it in that super generic way of, I'm just going to not really say anything. You have a unique ability of making people think differently.
I think it's starting with sticking to your guns. And if you believe strongly about something, then you can share that because you're sharing your belief. You're not sharing what everybody else has to believe. And that's the biggest difference when I'm writing about certain things, like a controversial topic like rent versus buy, right? Your apartment or buy your home. It's hugely controversial, not only in the bigger world, but also in the financial planning world.
Yeah.
I've been in confrontations with other advisors saying you are an idiot for thinking that you shouldn't be buying a home right now because that's the best way to go. But when I'm writing about it, I'm saying, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm doing it. You can't argue that that's what I'm doing because I'm doing it, right? You can argue that it doesn't fit your view of what you should do, but that's fine because it doesn't have to. But for the people that actually believe what I'm saying or have an interest in what I'm saying, because it might be a little bit different than what they've been told, they're going to be locked in, right? They're going to want to hear more from me. And that's what helps people come out and actually want to talk to me because they're connected in some way to something that I've said before they've met me.
And that's a really important part is, how can you build up that, it's not even building a persona. It really, talking to you, it is about being authentic, but in a way that does attract the clients that are going to want to work with you before they ever meet you and detract the clients that aren't a good fit. And that's the thing. There are 7 billion people on the planet. You can only work with so many as an individual. It is perfectly fine. And I would even say encouraged to, but detract the people that aren't the right fit.
Yeah, it's true. Because, and a lot of people, especially early on, I find myself doing this sometimes now, but especially early on, when you have no clients and you need to bring in people quickly to get the business up and running, you don't want to shut the door on anybody. So to say, I only work with even just a certain age group, you're like, well, what about all the other people?
Yeah.
But like you said, there's so many people out there in that category that are willing to work with someone who's committed to and believes in what they say. So I think that the advice that I would give somebody that is starting up is the difference between who you're working with now, which could be a wider group of people, and your actual messaging. They don't have to be the same thing. Your messaging can be super specific.
Yes.
Because that specific messaging is what you can build on long term. But who you're working with now is a different story because you do have to keep the doors open for your business. And have people come to me and they say, I know you work with people in their 30s and 40s. I'm 55. Can you work with me? So It's not like I can't work with them if I wanted to.
Yeah, sometimes it comes down to almost the personality fit. I would just say the only thing I would add is, in the early days, just make sure you're not taking on clients that are going to drain you, because then that's actually going to be a huge detractor to building your business and focusing where you need to focus.
Yeah, that's important. I think it's the experience of working with many people that you both like and don't like that allows you to understand that there are plenty of people that you can work with that you like, that makes your work with them more fulfilling. And therefore gives you energy instead of takes it away, and therefore keeps you going.
Absolutely. So, Eric, what is your fee model?
It is a mix of things. I don't sell any products for commissions, right? That is something that I've chosen not to do specifically. I wanted to be in a more objective role in there, or I thought that was the best place for me to be. And inside of that, most advisors will go to the AUM model, right? They'll charge a fee for the assets that they manage. And although that is something that I do, it's not always the best fit for clients that are younger because they might make a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of money. So the way that I start out with most people is it's monthly subscription. It's an annual type of a planning engagement that we have, and they pay for it monthly. And then if and when they want to bring over assets, we have a system to bring that in as well.
And if I recall correctly, you sort of have it to where it can phase out one way or the other so that it's not like you're charging the monthly plus AUM. That might happen sometimes, but you flex it so that in effect, whichever way you're paying, it's still the same fee. It's not like you're tacking on and double dipping.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's evolved over time. And I've always tried to make it so that there was this overall wealth management system that clients were involved in, and they would just get more and more engaged in that system as they grow their wealth and allow me to be that comprehensive planner. And it took a lot of different trials and tribulations to get there. But now it's $4,000 a year is going to give you financial planning, right? So you're going to pay $333 a month, and I'm going to provide you with comprehensive planning. We're going to have multiple meetings throughout the year. We're proactive in scheduling next meetings, having you follow up on action items and things like that. So you never feel like you have to chase us down, because we're usually chasing you down if things are, if you're slow in some area, which can be good for people. We don't force it down their throat, but we do make sure that they know that these are the things that they still need to do. I always say, I'm like the plow behind my clients to capture everything until they decide to do that next thing. And then if they want to bring over assets, there's a decreasing fee on the one hand, and the best way to do it is just to show it. I guess, can I show it to you? So how it is, like the first $50,000 is going to be free management to manage if you're under this program. And then as you start to increase your assets, the ongoing monthly fee comes down, and there's a 1% charge for the assets until they grow to a certain level. And then that fee also comes down. So, in the long run, as you're starting to grow towards that $1 million mark, you're probably going to pay the same on this model as you would on a basic AUM model. So it's not necessarily that I'm trying to charge a different total amount. It's more about, let me charge for what I'm doing. Because if the clients are valuing what they're paying for, they're going to stick with me because they know exactly what they're paying for. And I'm delivering that value over and over again, hopefully above and beyond whatever it is that I charge.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I've linked to that in the show notes so people can take a look. I really like how simply you've laid it out. And that's such a key point as well is, I guess my challenge, and we had this conversation years ago, and one of the big reasons I didn't charge assets under management is, well, the biggest reason, honestly, analyzing investments is just not my favorite thing to do. But it's also that I found that that's so often the clients will then kind of get stuck in that conversation. And if you start that way, then they're not always willing to open up into the broader planning conversations, or, they just overly focus on the investment side. But I like how you've created that hybrid there because, you're starting out from day one, like, hey, this really is about planning. There may or may not be assets under management there, but the focus is on that bigger picture.
Yeah, it's important to train your clients to understand what they should expect. Because I think the one thing, and you'll know this, when you're working with people who haven't worked with an advisor before, you're starting with a blank slate. And all they know about working with an advisor is what they've seen on TV or commercials or Fidelity or Schwab or somebody else, right? And for you to come in and say, let's start from scratch. This is what you can expect from me. This is why I think it's valuable for you. Do you agree? And then they can buy in that way. And here's how I price for these services that you've already said are valuable. So why wouldn't they come on board?
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And how has I was thinking back to some of the conversations we had early on when, we were doing the monthly subscription and we're like, hey, well, what are you charging? What are you charging? Because again, like we were all just making it up as we go. And for both of us, like that changed over the years. So you said now you're at, sort of $333 a month. That is not where we were at back in 2014.
Right. My first client was $50 a month.
Yep. Yeah, I think mine was too.
And he was like, let me just charge something that I feel like someone will pay at that point. But you build your own expertise and you build your process, and that becomes valuable. You add in certain software that also brings out more value, and you just starting to build this business. It's more expensive to run, but it's also more valuable in its deliverable. So you can start to charge more and more and more until you get to a level where enough is enough, right? So I feel like I'm finally at a place where I feel very comfortable that I can deliver more value than I'm charging. And that's all I need to be at a place like that. That's all I need.
Yeah. So what does that client journey look like today, and what sort of technology do you use to augment that process?
Well, the first year starts out with 5 meetings because those are the main tenets of the conversation. Right? The first meeting looks like a goals conversation about goals and priorities. So we understand on a timeline when you want to achieve certain things, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, what those things might be, how much they might cost. And I think the most important question I answer or ask in that conversation is, okay, we have this list of 7 items. Maybe retire by 60, pay for college for my kids, buy a vacation house, switch careers. Let's say those 4.
Sure.
Then I say, if you could only do one of those things, which one would it be? And a lot of times I get a deer in headlights look, like, I got to pick one. Yeah, you got to pick one. What would it be? And that's the first time they realize that there is a order of priorities here that we have to consider, because the next dollar has to go to the next most important goal. Until that goal is going to be achieved, we can't really move on to the next one. Otherwise, you are risking not achieving any of them. So it's that cascading effect. The next dollar goes to what? And I think that's helps to evolve the conversation, allows them to figure out what they really do prioritize, whether it's something specific like a tangible thing like a house, or it's freedom of lifestyle or schedule. And how do we back into those things because they said that they were the most important things. So that first conversation is all about that. And then the second conversation is about the scenario planning. So now that we have these goals and we can plug them into the software, we have your financial mechanism running right now. It's the cash flow and balance sheet as it stands today. So if we just press start and push that forward to 30 years down the road, does everything work out when you add in these goals? Or does the plan blow up in some place? Is it a short-term cash flow issue? Is it a long-term investment issue? And they start to see what works and what doesn't work and how we can plug these things together to hopefully make everything work. And that really gives them motivation to move forward to the next step, which is about investments, understanding your savings rate, where the money should be going, how much cash you should have versus non-retirement investments versus retirement investments, what should be going in there on an annual basis, and how should it be allocated. And in that conversation, I'm educating them enough to say, you could do this yourself, or you could use Beyond Your Hammock. What do you want to do? Either way is fine.
Yeah.
And they have to make a decision right then, because I think it's important for them to decide, yes, I'm going to do it myself, which means that I'm not going to be giving them specific funds, telling them when to rebalance. Like, I'm not doing the detailed operations work of the investments. They're doing it. But if they don't feel comfortable with that, or they don't have the time to do it, or the capacity mentally to take care of it, or just want to outsource that completely, we're here for that. So once they decide that, the rest of the conversations go in a little bit of a different direction, but continue to hone in on the tenets of financial planning, like protection, which is insurance and estate planning. And then there's kind of like a floating meeting. The 5th meeting is more like a floating meeting that says, let's make sure that we're taking care of all the things we talked about, because there's been a lot of stuff going on this first year.
Well, that, and I know from knowing you that throughout all those conversations, even though there's a lot of technicality there, your big thing is really around making sure that people are using money as a tool to live a life they love.
Yeah. It's why are we doing any of this? Like, why are you meeting with me 5 times this first year? Because if you didn't care about something that this is going to give you, then you wouldn't be here. And so let's always remind ourselves what that is. It's certainly a tool that helps us live life. It's not the other way around. I'm not here to help you grow a pile of money for the sake of saying you have a bunch of money. It doesn't inspire me, and I don't think it's going to inspire you either.
But that, I mean, that's an important part of it because there are still, a lot of people that's how we're trained. We're trained on the technical side. We're trained to do all of the analysis. We're trained to say, even if we gather their goals and look at, are you on track for the next 30 years? The conversation isn't always brought back to that. What actually does make you happy and those deeper conversations.
Yeah. Nobody has those conversations, though. For some reason, people stray
Yeah.
away from those conversations, whether it's them personally about their own lives or it's advisors with them saying that I don't want to get into the details here. I just want to give this cookie cutter. The masses do it this way. So here's your plan. That doesn't help anybody.
It doesn't. And like you were saying earlier, kind of asking questions that clients don't know how to answer, because we do ask so many questions around, hey, when do you want to retire? Nobody knows. We answer how we think we're supposed to answer. And I think everybody retires at 65. So I'm going to say 65.
Right. It's true. But every time because in the first conversation, when I'm saying, here's a timeline, I always want to talk about the further end of the timeline because most people spend their time in the next day, 2 days, 5 days, a year. So I want to start stretching their mind down the road. And that first thing is retirement. So I draw a line and I say, here's your retirement. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Do you want to stop working? Have you thought about this at all? Maybe you want to switch careers and become a consultant. Maybe you just want to continue doing exactly what you're doing. There's no definition for retirement. It's like, what does it mean to you? What do you want it to mean? And then we can help build that into the plan too.
Well, and we kind of looked through what the first year looks like, but financial planning is a process, not an event. And even if we think we know what we want 30 years from now to look like, we have no idea what's going to happen between now and then. So clients are with you for much longer than that, than just that first year.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing relationship that initially there's no time commitment, but I tell them my goal is to work with you for as long as you need planning. And I would say that you would need planning for life.
Yep.
So let's see where it goes. And so in year 2 and beyond, I mean, there's times when people change careers. Like the first day of second year, change careers. So we have to completely alter the plan because they make either twice as much money or half as much money as they did before. There's different benefits. They have equity compensation that they didn't have before. So we're talking about restricted stock units and ESPP plans and things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done on an ongoing basis because people's lives continue to evolve. So whether it's career, it's their goals, they want to have kids, they don't want to have kids, they want their kids to go to school and pay for it, they don't want to pay for their kids to go to school. I mean, there's so many different things that can come into play and that you don't know of yet, and therefore you can't plan for it today, that it's important to continue the conversation. They build the trust in me. They know that I know what they're looking to do. And at a point where they can call me up and say, Eric, you know me, I'm thinking about doing this new career or taking this other job. What do you think? So I don't have to answer them just from a financial perspective. I can also take in their tens of to 20 conversations that we've had before to say, you've said in the past that you really didn't want to take on this risk because it was more important for you to have consistency and therefore provide for your family than go out on this limb. This company is going out on a limb, so maybe you shouldn't go that route. So it's those types of in-depth conversations that only I can have with them because I'm the one who knows them that really continue to evolve the conversation forward. And the relationship gets stronger and stronger and doesn't always have to have a to-do list. What are we doing next? What are we doing next? What are we doing next?
Yeah.
Maybe nothing. Maybe we just chill out. Maybe we just sound off. I mean, who knows? Just let's just build something strong and sturdy throughout our relationship together.
And that's where so much of that deeper value comes in that, in a lot of ways you can't quantify financially. But, Eric, you have built this incredible business over the last 7 years. We've talked a lot about, the challenges in the beginning. You really put your ego aside. That's not something everyone is willing to do. You started this company with no blueprint. You figured it out all along the way. And I know thinking back, sort of the 4 of us that all started our businesses in 2013, I think in the first year we averaged, we all made like $30,000 on average in total revenue. And there are a lot of people listening. They're like, hey, but I've got this great, like you keep saying, secure job. I'm in this secure job with this salary and these benefits. And, that can be great for a lot of people. But the Innovating Advice Show is really about reaching those people that are saying, I wonder if there's something more, or there's a different way of doing it. So, Eric, as much as you're willing to share, can you kind of share how your business has evolved from a revenue standpoint over the last 7 years? And it's actually a couple of years ago got to such a successful point that your wife was able to join you full time.
Yeah, that was exciting. It's been a growing, evolving business, like we've talked about. So the first year, I think, it was like 29 grand. I think I made, which was incredible because it was my business.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I afforded a life, but I did. You just make it work. And then I think it jumped to 55,000. And maybe went to 75. I don't remember exactly. It could have been 29 to 55 to 75. I know that there was a $75,000 year in the early stages. Then to 125, 155, 300 was a big jump. And then, this year probably upwards of $400,000. It's something that I've been very consistent about, is growing that revenue stream. But along the way, it was initially like, let's get some money in the door.
Yeah.
Let's build a business that produces money, not necessarily taking into account whether it was one-time revenue, like a plan that you would just do once, or recurring revenue, like the assets under management or the monthly subscription that people are paying. So I'm very, very focused on the ongoing recurring revenues now, so much so that very few of the meetings that I have now are one-time revenue. So most of my business is recurring revenue, and it's upwards of probably 95 to 100% at this point, which that to me makes me feel really proud of my business, because now I have this security and I have a foundation that I can build on, because it's not going anywhere. Even in a pandemic, my business is not going anywhere, which is really something to say, because it was scary in March to say, where's this going next?
Yeah.
And we're still here.
Well, and it's, knowing you, it's not just about the revenue, it's about the life that it has allowed you and your wife, Kaylee, to build, and the freedom that it affords you. And in so many ways, you two are setting the example for your clients of what great financial planning looks like, and what it looks like to use money as a tool to live a life you love.
It's really fun to be able to not only live the life with my wife, but also work the business with her, because we're bringing in, we're co-hosts on the podcast, and she's my creative director for all of my online content. So there's a lot of our own beliefs that are in the content. So again, with the authenticity, that's how we believe. And then we go out and do it too, to the point where, buying a property that is a vacation house before we actually buy a primary residence. People were like, you got to buy a primary residence first, and then you buy the vacation house. I said, why? Why do I need to do that? I don't, because I don't need that. I need what I want. And being able to do that, and then bringing that back into the conversation to say, not that what we're doing is the best way to do it. It's certainly the best way for us to do it. But again, that think differently about what you think you need to be doing, and find out what you want to be doing. And even if it sounds crazy and your parents or friends are saying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You can go ahead and do that thing.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's fantastic. Eric, I love this. It has been so much fun to watch you build Beyond Your Hammock over the last 7 years. I can't even imagine what the next 7 years are going to look like. Thank you for all of the wisdom and advice and insights you provided to listeners. Thank you for your own authenticity in sharing your story, and just going out there and doing things differently, and being that incredible example of what is possible when you believe in yourself, when you listen to your gut, and when you just go after a life you love. So any final words for listeners?
Yeah, I want to thank you for allowing me to share that. but also not just to share it to a microcosm of the world, but the entire financial planning universe across the globe, which is exciting to think about what comes from a unified globe doing this kind of work. Not just one person or 10 people or a country, but a globe. Thinking about where I'll be in 7 years, like where will the industry be in 20 years? I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't either. And I think you and I both dream big, but I'm hoping that whatever really happens is even bigger than we can dream.
Yeah. Well said.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Innovating Advice Show. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a thought or two. Link to my profile is right below. Stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to hearing from you.